Right, so episode 2 of my first 1,000 days in business. Look, just to go back over what we spoke about in episode 1 was all around what to do before day one. You needing to get everything in place as far as your ABN number, getting a CRM in place, and all of that sort of stuff I did before I even actually started trying to run a business. So I wanted to move on from that a little bit. We will revisit some of those topics in future podcasts because I want to go a little bit deeper into why I did certain things rather than just this is what I did. Just to give a little bit of insight there into the reason behind some of those decisions. But look, moving on from that, open the doors essentially July 1, 2018, and just trying to work out, okay, what now? Now, obviously, I'd had quite a lot of experience in telco at that point, and I understood how the game worked for the most part. So it was get on the phone, make the calls, try and get in front of people, have the meetings and what have you. But hang on a sec, before I can even do that, what the hell am I going to be selling to these people? And so that was the next step was, okay, I need to sort out what I can actually sell. Now, the company loosely was based around a couple of the different businesses I'd worked for in the past as far as certain things to do, certain things what not to do. And it was, for me, it was very much around, okay, I wanted to be able to offer my clients services and products that were actually going to be in their best interest, not just the ones that were going to make the most commission. Again, as I mentioned in the first episode, everything that I do in my business is for the long term. So even though I was starting out and needed to get some runs on the board, needed to get some income coming in, even at that point, my focus was never about what is going to make me the most commission. It was all about what was going to be best for the client. So, to that end, I ended up going out, and I already had a relationship previously from when I was based over in Sydney with a company called Exitel. They sell phone systems and NBN connections and what have you, and their phone system pricing and everything is unbelievably aggressive. To this day, it is still probably the most aggressive pricing that I've seen in the market. It's absolutely incredible. So I went and got an agreement with those guys because I already had the relationship there. That was actually fairly easy to set up. And so I was able to start selling their products. And the other agreement that was really key to setting this business up was through the company that I used to work for, United Networks, over in Sydney as well. As I say, my company is loosely based partly on the way that United was set up back in the day when I was working there, and the ability to offer multiple mobile products to clients and multiple networks was going to be massive, and I really felt like I needed that to be able to make this work the way I wanted it to. So I had the discussion with United and came on essentially as one of their resellers. So that kind of got me, I guess, started as far as I had the products to sell. I could sell a VoIP phone system, I could sell an NBN, I could sell mobiles from the three main carriers. And that is really the starting point of where I wanted to be. I mean, long term, even at that point, my long term plan was that I wanted to be able to bill my clients directly for their services, for their phone systems and their NBNs and their mobiles and all of that. But at that point, it wasn't. I kind of figured that was probably 2 to 3 years away in reality. So I'll just run with it for the time being, sell these other products, and start building my client base that way, and start building, at least with the Exitel products, I was able to build a little bit of residual income for myself as a reseller, because they were paying a trailing commission instead of just an upfront. But I did have the upfront component with the mobile stuff going through United. So it felt like it was probably the best way to get going in that regard, and it gave me the whole product suite that I needed. So the next step from there was, okay, now I need to start calling people, and it's something a lot of people struggle with. with getting on the phones and making calls. I mean, you get given a database, or in extreme cases, you're told just Google a bunch of things. And I don't know how those companies manage to get by with just Googling stuff. But anyway, this is what you do. You get on the phone, you make X amount of calls, and you try and load up your pipeline and your sales list with meetings and potential clients for down the track. And it was one of the things, funnily enough, and it goes back to the CRM thing, that used to do my absolute head in when I was a sales manager, was trying to get sales reps to use the CRM correctly. And to this day, even other businesses I've been in since, and even speaking to other business owners, it's just absolutely impossible to get people to utilize the CRM, even to the point of the pipeline. It's in their own best interest, and they still won't do it, and it blows my fucking mind. But look, it's my outlook on a CRM and setting up a pipeline report and what have you in the CRM is this. You go through, let's say we'll use a round number, 100 calls for the week, right? And see, this is what, again, my reps used to do when I was a sales manager, and it was the hardest thing to try and change. And we never really got there. So that's probably more a reflection on me in some ways. But look, at the end of the day, they'd make 100 calls. They'd come up to me and say, look, I've made 100 calls. I've set 3 meetings. The meetings are in the calendar. I've updated them in the CRM. And they're so happy that they've set these 3 meetings and they've put them in the CRM and that they're in their calendar, and they thought they'd done this great thing, which they had. And I said that to them. I said, look, that's great. That's amazing. This opportunity looks good. And we had a bit of a chat through what those 3 opportunities were. And I said, look, now talk to me about the other 97 calls you've made for this week. And that's kind of where the shoe fell off the horse, let's say, that they just didn't understand, and it was a massive struggle to get there. I said to them, look, those 97 calls, those are your database. They're gold. Like, the 3 meetings are amazing, and look, great. Hopefully we get some business out of that. But these other 97 calls, they're your gold, because that's your database for the next 12, 18, 24 months, because of the people. Look, and I appreciate not every one of those 97 people he actually got to speak to. It went to voicemail, or the person was in a meeting, or what, fine, right? Or they told him to piss off and they hung up the phone, right? But of the 97 people, I would suggest at least half he would have had, a conversation with. Okay, the questions we were asking: which phone company are you with? Telstra, Optus, like, fine. How many phones do you have? If we're talking mobile, how many mobile phones do you have? 5, 3, 10, 20, 50, whatever the number is. Do you know roughly when your contract ends? And those sort of things. And they're the questions that we would ask, partly as qualifying questions, but also what I was training the guys to do was, when you can tell somebody is a no on the phone, don't waste the next 5 minutes trying to convince them to be a yes. It's one of the biggest failings that I see in salespeople in general, is that they spend so much. Hang on, I'll reword that. They waste a ridiculous amount of time pissing about trying to get a no to turn into a yes, instead of saying, thank you, Mr. Customer, for your time. I'll move on to find somebody that actually wants to work with me, and actually do that. The value, and I just, look, and I've been there, right? I've been in positions where basically the done thing, and this is how it's trained. This is how it's trained in telco, and I would imagine in many other industries as well, is just push, chase, and it's the 57th touch point that you'll get the deal. And it's like, well, yeah, but you know what? I'd rather go and have conversations with 20 other people that actually want to do business with me, rather than taking 57 touch points to try and convince somebody to give me a shot. It, to me, is the biggest waste of time in sales, and it's why so many people fail. So I can't stress it enough. This is why the CRM is so powerful. I even use it to this day. I use it exactly the same way, right? You speak to people, you find out when the contract's in, how many phones they've got, who they're with, and if they say to me, look, I'm in contract for another 18 months, fine, Mr. Customer, thank you for your time. Are you happy for me to give you a call back in 12 to 15 months? Yes, thank you. I'll put it in the calendar, right? And you put the opportunity out as you can use whatever stages you want. The one that I use is called still in contract. Very simple. Still in contract, put it out for whatever date I'm going to call them, whatever date their contract actually ends, and then I'll put a task in there to call them back 3 to 6 months earlier, whatever's been agreed, right? So that's how I use it, and that's how I've used it for years, and this is how I managed to build a successful sales career in telco for, with the majority of the companies I worked with, is following that process. And even the companies that I worked with where I wasn't successful, I still followed that process, but there were other factors in there that unfortunately caused the issues. But it definitely works. I mean, the track record that I've got with doing this, I feel, in my own mind at least, speaks for itself. And I don't believe I would have built the company in 3 years to what I have if I hadn't been following that process. We start doing this process now, and on the 1st of November, by the 1st of November, I've spoken to 500 people, right? Of those 500 people, 50 of them said, my contract's up by the end of this year. Please give me a call back, or I'm happy to receive a call back in October, November, thereabouts, right? So even say we look at this in October rather than November, it probably makes more sense. We look at it in October and we go, okay, I now have 50 people to call who I have genuinely spoken to in the last 6 months, who I know which phone carrier they're with, how many phones they've got, I know their contract's coming up at the end of this year, and I've probably got a rough idea of what they're spending at that point as well. So I can tailor something to what their requirements are prior to even speaking to them, and then we can work out the details of it. They may need more data, they may not need as much data. They may need the best coverage because they're working regionally, so they need Telstra. They may be purely metro based, so that they don't need Telstra. They can get by quite easily with either Optus or Vodafone. They may only be interested in looking at their phone system right now. Their mobiles have still got another 12 months to go. Whatever the case may be, but you've actually had the conversation, you've started the relationship, and if you using the CRM correctly, you've also been in touch with them via newsletters or what have you that you can send out through your CRM over that period as well. So you keep in touch with that person anyway, and then when you go back to them, most of the time they'll actually remember you, versus you just sound like a telemarketer over the phone and they think, who's this prick? Piss off, I'm too busy to it's building that relationship. So I think that's the path that I went down when I first started. Was I had the CRM in place. It was very important to use it correctly, or what I consider correctly in my mind. Getting the agreements with Exetel and United were key. Now I could go out and start actually speaking to people via cold calling, and there's various ways of doing that, and via networking was the other way that I use personally, and even to this day I still use, and have been highly successful in not only getting new clients. And I'll probably do an entire podcast separately on my focus with networking, but for me it's not necessarily about just getting new clients, but again, it's the long-term play. It's building the relationships. You go to a bunch of different groups and you build these relationships over time, and eventually, yes, the sales will start flowing through and what have you from there. So, it's not, everybody just wants to it's the old get rich quick thing, right? I don't believe in it. I know some outlier people have done it. I'm sure it's possible if you focus purely on making as much money in the shortest amount of time possible, and you don't really give two shits about the client as long as you get paid. And unfortunately, that's the way a lot of telco sales reps are wired. And look, to be fair, so was I. Back when I very first started selling telco, that's almost how we were trained, was just do whatever you need to get the deal. I know a managing director of a company that I worked for who said to one of his, let's say, staff, straight out, I don't care what you have to do to get the deal. I just don't want to know about it when you get back with the signed paperwork. And I'm standing there when he said this, and I've just looked at him and gone, you are kidding. There was about half a dozen of us standing there. We all knew what he was talking about, but none of us wanted to say it. It blew me away but that's what but that's the salespeople mentality, or at least, that person's mentality. I can't obviously pin that on everybody, but that's a lot of the sort of thing that is trained. Just do whatever you need to do to get the sale. It doesn't really matter what you do. Just get the sale, get it in, and away we go. So for me, there was two main things. There was getting the agreements in place and then actually doing the work. I was never really of the assumption, actually I was of the opposite assumption, that things were going to come quickly and easily. My assumption with starting a business was that I was going to have to work my ass off for 18 hours a day for the next 12 to 24 months before anything really started to click. And I was happy to do that. I was fully prepared to do it. And it came from actually enjoying and loving what I do. And I spoke to that in the first episode as well, is because I was doing something, or am doing something that I enjoy doing, it doesn't even so much feel like work for me. It's just the way it is. I mean, it's the whole cliche, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And look, cliches for the most part bore the shit out of me, but this one, it kind of makes sense, I guess, because at the end of the day, it's what I'm doing. I don't feel like it's really work because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. But at the same time, I'm putting in anywhere between 12 to 18 hours a day. And have been for the last 3 years. And it's gone quickly. It doesn't feel like it's been 3 years. If I look at my business now versus what I expected it to be when I first started, it's beyond all of my expectations. The whole premise of this episode was more about, look, I've got everything in place now, or not everything, Jesus. You learn that later on, but I've got what I felt like I needed to start. I had the agreements in place. I had the mindset, which to me felt right, of I just need to put in the work. I had the CRM there to support me. And look, and even that evolves over time, right? There's other reports that you'll build in. There's other things that you realize that you can do with this. And that was one of the biggest things with the CRM, that I didn't realize how locked down the telco companies keep their CRMs. I just had never thought of it because I hadn't seen an alternative. But once you get access to the admin level of a CRM system, you realize just how powerful it is and just how much you can do with it. And I guarantee, even to this point, I'm not using probably 20% of what it can do. But even with what I am using, I could not run my business without it.